Hello again, boys and girls. I'm going to read two more chapters from the Tale of Despereaux. And now we know Rosciero really loves the light, and Botticelli thinks he's crazy because he's a rat. And he thought he would enjoy tormenting the prisoner with the red tablecloth, but he didn't really enjoy it. He was looking forward more to the light than actually that tormenting. So, chapter 19 is Light, Light Everywhere. Imagine, if you will, having spent the whole of your life in a dungeon. Imagine that late one spring day, you step out of the dark and into a world of bright windows and polished floors, winking copper pots, shining suits of armor, and tapestries sewn in gold. Imagine. And while you are imagining things, imagine this too. Imagine that at the same time the rat steps from the dungeon and into the castle, a mouse is being born upstairs. A mouse reader who is destined to meet the light-bedazzled rat. But that meeting will occur much later, and for now, the rat is nothing but happy, delighted, amazed to find himself standing in so much light. "I," said Rosciero, spinning dizzily from one bright thing to the next, "I will never leave. No, never. I will never go back to the dungeon. Why would I? I will never torture another prisoner. It is here that I belong." The rat waltzes happily from room to room until he found himself at the door to the banquet hall. Queen Rosemary, the Princess P, 20 noble people, a juggler, 4 minstrels, and all the king's men. This party reader was a sight for a rat's eyes. Rosciero had never seen happy people. He had known only the miserable ones, Gregory the jailer, and those who were consigned to his domain. They did not laugh or smile or clink glasses with the person sitting next to them. Rosciero was enchanted. Everything glittered, everything. The gold spoons on the table and the jingle bells on the juggler's cap, the strings on the minstrels' guitars and the crowns on the king's and queen's heads. And the little princess, oh, how lovely she was, how much like light herself. Her gown was covered in sequins that winked and glimmered at the rat. And when she laughed, and she laughed often, everything around her seemed to glow brighter. "Oh, really," said Rosciero, "this is too extraordinary. This is too wonderful. I must tell Botticelli that he was wrong. Suffering is not the answer. Light is the answer." And he made his way into the banquet hall. He lifted his tail off the ground and held it at an angle and marched in time to the music. The minstrels were playing on their guitars. The rat reader invited himself to the party. Chapter 20, A View from a Chandelier. There was, in the banquet hall, a most beautiful and ornate chandelier. The crystals that hung from it caught the light of the candles on the table and the light from the face of the laughing princess. They danced to the rhythm of the minstrel's music, swaying back and forth, twinkling and beckoning. What better place to view all this glory, all this beauty? There was so much laughing and singing and juggling that no one noticed, as Rosciero crawled up a table leg and onto the table and flung himself onto the lowest branch of the chandelier. Hanging by one paw, he swung back and forth, admiring the spectacle below him, the smells of the food, the sound of the music, and the light, the light, the light! Amazing, unbelievable! Rosciero smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, a rat can hang from a chandelier for only so long before he is discovered. This would be true at even the loudest party. Reader, do you know who it was that spotted him? You're right, the sharp-eyed Princess P. "A rat!" she shouted. "A rat is hanging from the chandelier!" The party, as I have noted, was loud. The minstrels were strumming and singing. The people were laughing and eating. The man with the jingle cap was juggling and jingling. No one in the midst of all this merriment, heard the P. No one, except for Roscuro, rat. He had never before been aware of what an ugly word it was. Rat. In the middle of all that beauty, it immediately became clear that it was an extremely distasteful syllable. Rat. A curse, an insult, a word totally without light. And not until he heard it from the mouth of the princess did Roscuro realize that he did not like being a rat, that he did not want to be a rat. This revelation hit Roscuro with such force that it made him lose his grip on the chandelier. The rat reader fell, and alas, he fell right directly into the queen's bowl of soup. I'm trying to get it. Oh no. Chapter 21. The Queen's Last Words. The Queen loved soup. She loved soup more than anything in the world, except for the Princess P and the King. And because the Queen loved it, soup was served in the castle for every banquet, every lunch, and every dinner. And what soup it was! Cook's love and admiration for the Queen and her palate moved the broth that she concocted from the level of mere food to a high art. On this particular day, for this particular banquet, Cook had outdone herself. The soup was a masterwork, a delicate mingling of chicken, watercress, and garlic. Roscuro, as he surfaced from the bottom of the Queen's capacious bowl, could not help taking a few appreciative sips. Lovely, he said, distracted for a moment from the misery of his existence. Delightful. See, shouted the P. See, she stood. She pointed her finger right at Roscuro. It is a rat. I told you that it was a rat. He was hanging from the chandelier, and now he's in Mama's soup. The musicians stopped playing their guitars. The juggler stopped juggling. The noble people stopped eating. The Queen looked at Roscuro. Roscuro looked at the Queen. Reader, in the spirit of honesty, I must utter a difficult and unsavory truth. Rats are not beautiful creatures. They are not even cute. They are really rather nasty beasts, particularly if one happens to appear in your bowl of soup with pieces of watercress clinging to his whiskers. There was a long moment of silence. And then Roscuro said to the Queen, I beg your pardon. In response, the Queen flung her spoon in the air and made an incredible noise, a noise that in no way was worthy of a queen, a noise somewhere between the neigh of a horse and the squeal of a pig, a noise that sounded something like, and then she said, There's a rat in my soup. The Queen was really a simple soul, and always, her whole life, had done nothing except state the overly obvious. She died as she lived. There's a rat in my soup, were the last words she uttered. She clutched her chest and fell over backward. Her royal chair hit the floor with a thump, and the banquet hall exploded. Spoons were dropped, chairs were flung back. Save her, thundered the king. You must save her. All the king's men ran to try and rescue the Queen. Roscuro climbed out of the bowl of soup. He felt that, under the circumstances, it would be best if he left. As he crawled across the tablecloth, he remembered the words of the prisoner in the dungeon. His regret that he did not look back at his daughter as he left her. And so Roscuro turned. He looked back. And he saw that the princess was glaring at him. Her eyes were filled with disgust and anger. Go back to the dungeon, was what the look she gave him said. Go back to the darkness where you belong. This look, reader, broke Roscuro's heart. Did you think that rats did not have hearts? Wrong. All living things have a heart, and the heart of any living thing can be broken. If the rat had not looked over his shoulder, perhaps his heart would not have broken. And it is possible, then, that I would not have a story to tell. But, reader, he did look. I'm trying to think of how many pages. Oh, there are only 2 more chapters until the end of the book, but I think I'll stop there because I want you on the edge of your seat. Okay, so 2 more chapters.